I want to continue that election aspect with Jonny Gould, who's a talkTV presenter, in terms of the Israeli element of this, because there has been, as part of this big deal, it's not just the 61 billion in military support to Ukraine, it's also quite a lot of aid as well, about 26 billion to Israel and to citizens of Gaza. Jonny, thank you for joining me. Tell me what you think of this and how Israel will react, because Netanyahu, we saw some scenes of huge protests near his villa last night, and the fact is that he is under a lot of political pressure for lots of reasons, Jonny.
The pressure that the protesters want to put upon Benjamin Netanyahu is that they believe he's prosecuting the war, ignoring the plight of the hostages, and going full pelt to try and prosecute the war, the greater good, if you like, of the whole of the population of Israel, rather than the poor families of the 133 incarcerated. And don't forget, now it's over 6 months that those poor people, old and young, babies as well, have been incarcerated who knows where. I don't think even Hamas and Islamic Jihad know exactly where they are. Just to break down the figures, Peter, of the aid, some $5.2 billion will go towards replenishing and expanding Israel's missile and rocket defense system. How important is that, considering the events of this time last week? Another $3.5 billion will go to purchasing advanced weapons systems. $1 billion will enhance weapons production. $4.4 billion for other defense supplies and services provided to Israel,
which have been so vital given what has happened in the last 7 or 8 days or so. And of course, we had calls here in the UK for people. I mean, I saw a protest the other day in London, people saying don't sell military or don't give military equipment to Israel. Well, Israel absolutely needed it. Otherwise, its people would have had felt the full force of those 300 rockets from Iran. Thankfully, there were very, very little damage done. Only one injury of a 7-year-old girl who was in critical condition. But clearly, this military aid has gone. But it's come with conditions as well, Jonny, hasn't it? Certainly in regard to Gaza.
It always does, Peter. By the way, Iron Dome was invented by an Israeli, Aaron Gould. So the idea that Britain should not provide aid of weaponry to Israel to boycott, when actually most of the weaponry comes the other way, is a nonsense. It's political posturing. The point is that in this current modern warfare situation, Israel is an asset to the world, fighting as it is a very, very urban situation. It is learning new lessons about countering terrorism, which Britain, Canada, the United States, the whole of the European Union will need in the future, whether there are direct attacks or not from Iran. And as you mentioned, these aid packages are conditional. They always are, and they are based upon American jobs, because some of the billions of dollars go specifically to certain states. There will be senators and congressmen who say, hey, part of these billions must go to the, 5,000 jobs that come in from...
And that was actually a criticism. It was more in regard to Ukraine, Jonny, but I wonder what your reaction is from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is really, really critical of the fact that she said it was disgusting more money was going to Ukraine. You never hear anybody demanding peace. That's because it doesn't fit the business model. And some would argue that perhaps there's an element of the defence industry in regard, and those jobs, as you say, American jobs, in regard to supplying Israel.
Indeed, and I was very struck with what Greg Swenson said just a couple of minutes ago. He said what Donald Trump says he's going to do and what he does eventually do are two different things. I think perhaps one of the reasons, and I wonder if Greg might ponder this, is the reason why the Republicans on some parts of the party are so annoyed about this aid package going through just, 3 or 4 months before an election, is they're actually stealing the thunder of Donald Trump, who is far from isolationist in the Middle East. It's just that his attempts to create a peaceful solution to the Middle East are in complete counter to the ideas of Antony Blinken and Joe Biden. He's going for Saudi, the UAE, Bahrain, and the Abraham Accords as his major diplomatic achievement, and the way to engage a new and more moderate Palestinian Authority to grow in peace, whereas Biden and his crew are after sorting out Iran, funding them. And by the way, very, very importantly, Peter, just reading this out of the Times of Israel, that the American bill for aid also prohibits all funds going to UNRWA, the works agency, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency.
Well, that's absolutely correct. That is absolutely what should happen.
Absolutely the right thing to do.
450 of their quote-unquote aid workers were suspended for Hamas links, and UNRWA said that they just didn't know that the technological infrastructure for Hamas was under their headquarters. It's really weird that that happened, and the fact that we saw those horrendous WhatsApp groups as well of people glorifying in the death of innocent Israelis as well, Jonny.
It's the thin end of the wedge as well. I mean, these are people who've been caught hook, line and sinker, but talking to my friend Dr. Inat Wilf, she believes that UNRWA is the absolute central issue of creating the war, creating refugees out of people who've been there many generations, who in other conflicts might not be classed as refugees at all. The idea of a right of return for grandchildren of Palestinians, when in fact a state could be created out of Gaza and the West Bank, but they don't want that. They want all of the state of Israel. So here is the conflict in a nutshell, Peter, and UNRWA is really central to it.
It's an organisation which is completely discredited as far as I'm concerned. Jonny, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. Jonny Gould, talkTV presenter and Israel expert.